Good morning, everyone. My name is Brad Kalali, and I'm the Associate Dean for the full-time and global MBA programs. I feel as if, for those of you who have any familiarity with the program Sesame Street, I feel as if I'm like one of these things is not like the other. I think I've got 2x, 3x age on everybody out there. You're looking healthy and well wherever you are around the world. This is one of the greatest joys I have as being an academic and being an academic leader is to actually be surrounded by the energy and the power and the enthusiasm and the optimism of every MBA and being on an academic, being in a university setting is in fact one of the most inspiring and wonderful things that I can have as a career. And so I'm so incredibly grateful for everybody joining in around the world. Of course, because I may have a few extra years on everybody out there, I am woefully behind in my multitasking. I've just navigated and kind of my way to TikTok to watch exactly what my 20-some-year-old daughter is doing. Um, I'm incredibly proud. Now I just need her to get a properly paying job, and then I'll feel like much better as a father. Perhaps maybe she'll qualify for a Ross MBA some stage in the future. So over on one side of my screen, I've got the chat lighting up. I've got my colleagues. I've got Diana, Michael, Sujin. I've got an extraordinary student who is thankfully one of my students in the full-time program in her core strategy class. Chloe Hull will be with us a little bit later on, and Eric Schwartz will be with us in just a moment. He's a professor in marketing, and also, I don't know if I'm actually the right person to say this, but I think he's cool. And he's doing fascinating stuff around the world, making an impact through the tools of business and really making the world a better place. And that is really what we're all about here, right? So I'm going to talk for an excruciatingly 5 minutes on academics. And first of all, I'm going to talk about what my role here is at the school. As you can see around the background, I am in the office. It is a safe place here. We keep it particularly clean. The bandwidth at my home is a little bit suspicious right now. In addition, I have two Labrador retrievers, just like the dean. Mine are more beautiful, who are going to actually probably interrupt me, and you don't need to see that this morning. But I'm in the office right now. I do not have Everest or Antarctica pictures around. I've got my family, which is near and dear to my heart, that matters most to me right now, especially as we around the globe battle the pandemic. And most importantly, I hope this note and our time together finds you healthy and well, and all your loved ones as well in that same state. So, as the Associate Dean for the Full Time and Global MBA programs, I've said this once on stage at an orientation, and it didn't go too well. You met the Dean, Scott DeRue. You've met Sujin Kwan, the Managing Director, and someone said, "What do you do?" I said, "I go between Scott and Sujin," and that just didn't come out all that well. But to give you an idea, what my responsibility is I'm ultimately responsible for your success, your well-being, your success, your academic achievement. Ultimately, as well, hoping that they can kind of supporting you, and with Heather Byrne and her team at the Career Development Office, making sure you get the career, the next stepping stone on the way to the career that you aspire to have, and that pivot, that shift that you want to have for the wonderful life in the future. So I liken this. My analogy is I'm kind of like an air traffic controller in the London airspace. I'm the only person there with a cathode ray tube, and I'm directing faculty and I'm directing senior leaders of the school and students and the like, just to make sure that we innovate and we give you and deliver the leading, innovative, action based learning experience that you want when you come here to Ross. So that's my responsibility. I do not use the analogy of a vice principal at a high school, not the way it works around here. Okay, I'm actually reasonably friendly. I want to talk just briefly about academics and why we're different. And let's get something off the table right off the bat. You've applied to many wonderful schools, and you will achieve wonderful things from those schools because that is who you are and why you are the leader and why you are the person that's investing in yourself for the future. The question that I always ask is, especially around academics, is you're going to learn finance, you're going to learn accounting, you're going to learn economics, you're going to learn how to manage people, you're going to learn operations. I got this emblazoned in my head. You don't want to hear all the core courses, but my analogy is I kind of look at your educational investment as a pyramid, right? At the foundation is your cognitive foundations. And I would encourage you to go to a school and choose a school, and we can't wait to welcome you here as well. Goodness gracious, that is a university and a business school that takes the foundations incredibly seriously. So if you look at, of the 10 disciplines of business, and I mean the disciplines of business, there's only two organizations, only two business schools anywhere in the world that have 9 out of the 10 of those ranked in the top 10. It's us and Stanford. So we, first and foremost, we really desperately value, and by the way, I'm not taking this down the rabbit hole of being a nerd, but we value the foundations and the discipline and the rigor on which you will build and kind of invest in your mind and your capabilities. So it doesn't matter what it is and what core course you're going to take it from the leaders of the world here, without question. And number two, associated with that, is that it's not just taking the course. In everything we do, it's about action based learning. So at the foundation, you have those courses and activities in those courses, and in deep engagement with the faculty in terms of the debate and the discourse and the learning. This is not a one-way flow. Education for us is a two-way flow, debate and engagement. And when you hear from Eric, you'll hear exactly how he engages both as a faculty member and a core course instructor for the marketing core course, but also as a researcher, as someone who supports our data analytics club here at the school. So it's all about the experience built on top of the cognitive foundations, whether it be MAP, whether it be our Impact Studio, whether it be Living Business Leadership Experience, whether it be the university that has the most student-led funds anywhere in the world, investment funds. It's about action. Right? I would encourage you, for those who really want to go on and do a PhD, we've got lots of people here who will coach you and mentor you, and we want you to join our PhD program. But we know precisely what the vast majority of you here is: to become that better leader and making a positive impact in that world. So some innovations we've done around here, both on the cognitive foundations and the action-based learning dimension of it, is we have a track for the degree that is STEM certified, and it's in the management science field. But if you look at the courses that we have there, you can fulfill that STEM requirement and that STEM qualification by taking a number of finance courses, by taking a number of accounting courses, by taking a number of management science courses, and most importantly, data analytics courses. And in fact, when you hear from Chloe later on, she is a dual degree student, both at Ross and our School of Information, doing a master's in School of Information. That's the power of analytics and rigor, along with the power of application and solving those problems. And that's why I'm so grateful to have both Eric and Chloe here today. So how we structure the academics and the entire experience is around innovation, action learning, and really focused on the most current skills that will mobilize you and equip you to move forward in the career that you really want. So this is about innovation. This is about thinking laterally, creatively, and integratively in an ambiguous situation. Just taking your core strategy course, which is what I teach, is not going to help you do that. Just taking your finance course is not going to help you do that. And marketing and econ and stats. You know the lineup, you've seen it. It's going to be similar in pretty much any other school out there. That's fundamental for building that, if you will, muscle memory and rigor in your mind. But what we care about is that action-based learning, that innovation, and tackling ambiguous, unclear situations. It's not about risk, it's about ambiguity. And I'm in the thick of it right now with 2 MAP projects that have pivoted, shifted, adapted, morphed in multiple different ways. And the leadership and the capability of our students, our current first-year students, to see them do that is really extraordinary. Right? So it's not about taking your core courses and almost saying, I can use finance for this, or strategy for this, or accounting for this. It's about bringing it together and thinking in a different way that really allows you to create that impact and be that leader that you want to be. So cognitive at the base. Next one in the pyramid, I really should not. This is probably the most exercise I've had in video conferencing for the last 3 weeks, is moving my hands around it, trying to do charades, right? Cognitive foundation, experience here, and at the top of everything is leadership. And we have a curriculum on leadership that's second to none. We have experiences such as our Sanger Leadership Center, that is, the Impact Challenge, the Crisis Challenge, Story Lab, all of these activities that are above and beyond the foundations of our courses that allow you to develop your skills as a leader, your ability to communicate, your ability not only to lead, but also, let's be honest, the ability to follow, the ability to be part of a team. Forget the hierarchy. It's how do we get stuff done collectively together? I think, and I've been incredibly fortunate in my life. I've been able to live in London, England, and I was going to say, fortunately, I was going to say New Jersey. There's a joke in there somewhere, but I'll move right along. Southern New Jersey. I've lived in Southern California. I'll get it out of the way. Out and about the house. I'm originally from Toronto. I've lived in multiple different locations, and I'm so fortunate. But there is something actually, and I'm going to be a little bit kind of blunt on this. There is something about our location and something about it spills over to Toronto, my hometown, which is roll up your sleeves, let's get it done. Don't mess around. Don't bring me all the fancy kind of awards and everything else like that. We're here to make a difference, and we're here to make a difference as those that are action oriented, and we care desperately about impact. How do we make our lives, the lives around us, and our community lives around us a better place? And we do that through the tools of business and the skills of business and the foundations thereof. And I've talked about our data and analytics club, but we also have a concentration for data analysis, business, and data analytics, in addition to the STEM track, if you wish to choose that, if that's important for you. We also have concentrations in healthcare, where we're a leader in healthcare around the world. And all of these activities, when you think about this pyramid, right, the cognitive foundations, the experience, and the leadership at the top, this brings me to, right, what are the three big differentiators for us? And that is at the top of the pyramid. For me, the differentiators for us are it's about action and about results and about experience, one. Number two, it's the breadth of excellence that we bring to bear as a university. Ross is a wonderful school. By the way, so is our School of Social Work, Public Policy, Medicine, Nursing, Pharmacy. I'm going to get winded awfully quickly, and it sounds as if I'm beating my chest. I do not mean to be. That is very un-Canadian and very un-Michigan in what we do. But the simple reality of the matter is there are a small handful, on one hand, of universities around the world that are so devoted with such excellence and breadth. I mean, our College of Engineering, our School of Medicine, we take our responsibility to society, to our students, to our faculty, to our staff as a community tremendously seriously. And there is no greater time than right now for that mission to bring to bear the power of our scholarship, the power of our community, the power of our students supporting each other in the face of a global pandemic. We've been able to rely upon the power of our research at our medical school and our School of Public Health to inform us about how best to keep our community safe, to continue our academics, and most importantly, to support our communities. Three things: action, breadth, and excellence. And you know what? I'm going to do number three, and it should be number one. And that's our community. And our community starts with our students. And if I hope each and every one of you have had the experience, and I know we're from all around the globe, but I cannot wait to welcome you here on campus, and my team to welcome you here on campus, and most importantly, the first years and even those second years you may be leaving but want to come back. That tip, that issue of leadership, the chance to enhance yourself as a leader, yes, with co-curricular activities, but that's our community. I believe that what makes us different is not the core courses. Yes, it's the action-based learning that can come from it. But at the top of this is how we support each other. And it is magical. I know that seems an extreme term, but it is magical, if not beautiful, how to be part of a community where I have always seen, in the heat of getting into the core courses and adjusting to academics, nothing but support and affection and caring amongst individuals within the community to support each other as we learn. We are always stronger together. And that is who we are. That defines who we are as a school, as a community, And at no other time in the world is it more important than right now. And I couldn't be more proud to be part of this community. And when I say community, I mean everybody, not the nerds on the floors above me, not the leaders who make it go, not just Sujin, not just Diana, not just Michael, not just Brian, not just Elizabeth, not just Rachel, not just our students, but together as one, we are more powerful. And we want you to be the most powerful, the most empathetic, the most successful leader that you want to be. And we're here to support you in that journey. I want to really highlight, and Professor Schwartz is lurking in the background. I think I realize that my eyes are kind of slightly. Oh, you're waving. That's so fantastic. Professor Schwartz and I may go down the rabbit hole of kind of like talking smack to each other from time to time. It's all in jest. I'm incredibly grateful to have him as a colleague. My eyes are kind of averting slightly. I am that old person trying to get used to video conferencing. So we'll get there eventually. So I'm trying my best to make eye contact. Eric Schwartz is a professor in our marketing department. He has his undergrad and his PhD from University of Pennsylvania, which means he failed his finance course because he doesn't understand the power of diversification, right? Right, undergrad, grad, come on, you got to get out and go to a few more places. Glad you're here with us right now. I'm going to make the transition and let Eric take over for me in about 30 seconds. Without just before I actually let you know, Eric does teach the core marketing course, and he is. How would I describe Eric? Eric is dynamic. Eric is extraordinarily empathetic. He cares desperately about everybody he works with, and he raises everybody up to a level of performance and a level of enthusiasm, and I would say also a level of happiness by working with him, second to none around here. I'm grateful that he's here, and if you ever want to see how we take the power of the analysis, the power of our knowledge, the power of our capabilities as thinking integratively across disciplines to solve a real, true, pressing problem, and to think about how we do it in the most efficient, more responsive, most impactful business way, it's Professor Eric Schwartz. Eric, I am honored and thrilled that you are here. I think I just checked my watch. Of course, I said 5 minutes. It's more than that. Oh my goodness gracious! Typical academic. I've taken some of your time. Can I pass it over to you, sir?
Before I get into telling you exactly how data science and machine learning can help find lead pipes in Flint, and how Ross MBAs and the experience that you all can have here actually are contributing to those efforts, let me just tell you a little bit about myself, a bit more than what Brad was saying. I am a quant guy. Traditionally, I'm a total data nerd. I was a math major. All I do for my research, for the most part, by design, is build statistical models and build algorithms to usually work with companies in marketing. But at around 2016, as many of you are aware, something kind of changed around here in Michigan. The Flint water crisis began. And the kind of researcher and professor I am here, and because I surround myself here with colleagues that do a lot more than just customer analytics and marketing, because my dearest friends here are computer scientists and roboticists and psychologists and public health experts, as the Flint water crisis came to the fore, came to local and national news, my instinct wasn't just, oh, how can I give money, or this is awful. It was, what can we do to help? How can my colleagues and students and I find a way to get to know that community and find a way to see if any of our skills can solve some of these problems? And notice we weren't trying to swoop in and just solve a problem that nobody asked us to solve. It really did start with communication and conversation in this community engaged way. And so over the course of the next talk or so, 40 minutes or so, maybe a little longer, as I'll follow Brad's suit and extend a bit, if Diana doesn't tell me not to. Uh, we'll cover that story. And critically, it's going to involve Ross MBAs, and not just Ross MBAs, but other Michigan students working within Ross with Ross MBAs who are able to solve these kinds of problems in a design thinking way, integrating multiple disciplines, integrating research into practice, and having a positive impact. All right. And I'll have some questions, and we'll make this a bit interactive around halfway through or so. Maybe on the 2/3 side. Great. Well, it's wonderful to see everyone's smiling faces around the world, and glad everyone's here and safe. All right, let's jump right in. Slides are changing. Great. So here's my intro, really, to say, why the hell is a marketing professor doing this? Why is a marketing professor going to look at why a water utility can better identify which of its customers have exposure to lead in their drinking water? I'll describe this application to Flint, and I'll talk a little bit just at a high level about how we use data and machine learning to do this, and successfully, and to then tell you what happens when other cities start hearing about it, and what does demand look like then, and how we've engaged Ross students through a variety of means, but especially the Impact Studio, one of our engaged learning courses and experiences, and then turn it to you, and ask you what you think we should be doing. All right. So, and to be clear, what you're going to see is the course of a voluntary research project turned into kind of a bigger research project, turned into a course experience that's also turned into a startup organization. And I'll leave it vague like that, because that's part of the point here. So this is what I'm talking about. This map I like to use because it really captures where we're headed. I'm going to tell you about how the city of Flint and dozens of cities like it do not know which of its homes have lead pipes. Lead is a dangerous substance that in the water is a neurotoxin to children and pregnant mothers who are giving birth to new children. And this is what we did. They didn't know which homes had lead, and we put probabilities on the top of each of these homes. And this scales up to the whole city. So this is where we're headed. So first, why were we involved? What do we do? And what's next? I like to use these United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. I don't know if some of you are familiar with them, but this is number 6. I've made 6 my business over the past couple of years. And it's a really important way and helpful way to orient your work, whether it's your personal work, whether it's your professional work, whether it's your research, or your writings, your job search. It's a set of goals that the United Nations several years ago, which means hundreds of countries and organizations and companies around the world, have kind of agreed upon, yeah, these are important. Let's prioritize these. It's also the way a lot of funders operate, both investing and grant making. So it's helpful to get to know these. And fortunately, our Business Plus Impact and Impact Studio and lots of different parts of the school and university also orient their priorities around this. So why a marketing professor? I actually have convinced my colleagues and my entire field, worrying about the quality of communities' water systems is exactly a business and marketing question. In fact, you can think of what happened in Flint, and we'll cover a little of the background, as someone changing a product quality, generating an absolute product quality failure. It's a crisis. We're familiar with crises in industry. You can go through different product recall crises where products are having to be taken off the shelves or production is stopped. And consuming water is vital. Access to quality water is vital and a global concern. Interestingly, when you look around most of the parts of the world, water is provided through a combination of a public-private partnership. And even if it's fully public, we all, as water drinking residents, are usually considered consumers, customers, in name and in concept, whether it's by taxes or rates. And so aging infrastructure jeopardizes our public health. And of course, water and lead are just two cases, but there are many others. You can use this framework, and we can talk about that if you'd like. But this product failure crisis is not unfamiliar to us from a pure business perspective. And in fact, from my own research, I think about how do you manage resource constraints when you need to deal with something in real time and immediately resolve it, but also need to learn about it by testing. And this balance between, well, we know what we need to do to treat it, but we also need to be testing, but our resources are constrained. That's actually what we were seeing in the Flint water crisis early on. They didn't have enough money and time to go to every single house. In fact, cities today don't have enough time to do that. I'm literally just yesterday spent a couple of hours on the phone with the state of Michigan's drinking water group talking about these very issues as we've been providing consulting for them. And you might hear this line of, well, how should we strategically target interventions to both treat and test individual cases? And it might sound a little familiar, especially today in April 2020. To some nods, this is as relevant to coronavirus and COVID and contagious diseases as it may sound. In fact, I wrote most of these slides months ago, over the past 2 or 3 years. This is the way a lot of statisticians and data scientists who think about how we deal with resource constraints in the real world are talking and thinking about big issues like coronavirus today, but also it's exactly how we approached the Flint water crisis back in 2016. This is not just a Flint issue. Nationwide, 2016 kind of alerted us to this, but it continues. This kind of headline that you see was a 2016 piece, but there's many in 2017, 18, and 19. Just Newark in 2019 had the same issue. So where's the lead? Where's the lead? Most of it actually is living in these little lead straws that are going from the so-called water main that go along with the street, but then these service lines that are going perpendicular to the street, these lead service lines. These water service lines could be lead, but they could be other material. Copper would be relatively safe one, plastic in the short term, relatively safe. Galvanized also needs to be replaced, much like lead. And so the question is, how do we identify these? Because they're buried underground. We can test the water at the tap, at the sink, but it turns out that's actually not the most reliable indicator of if you actually have lead coming into your home. You can test the water at the tap multiple times and get different readings. Most of the time when you test homes that have lead pipes, you actually don't find lead coming out of the tap. But that's just because of bad luck. It might come out in other times in that day. And so it's really critical to think about this. Problem is, this is going to cost a lot of money. We're talking digging, figuring out which homes have lead pipes, and then replacing them. So there's what's wild is the order of magnitude difference in how big this problem is. And the estimates of how many homes actually have lead pipes is remarkably uncertain. And I'll explain exactly why that is the case. And actually, states and different agencies around the country are trying to work on this, but even the federal government is really trying to figure this out right now. The Environmental Protection Agency literally has just put out a new rule and invited comments, to which we've responded, my colleagues and I. And so these costs will be borne by us. The benefits are clear: health, social benefits. Recent research shows that not only does lead as a neurotoxin affect children's cognitive development, affect their performance in school, affect their later in life outcomes, but also directly affects cardiovascular risk, which puts extra cost on the health system. And actually, local economies have something to gain here. A classic stimulus response is putting so-called shovels in the ground. A lot of money can go into local communities, and typically in underserved and under-resourced communities. And so there's jobs that are created. There's folks that may be sitting on the sidelines, not employed, that have the skills to be part of local construction jobs here. And I've seen that firsthand in Flint and firsthand in other cities now. But we don't know which homes have lead. So here we go. It's the same kind of headlines. These are just different years. More of the problem just continues. It's spreading in New Jersey. This is 2019. Newark, New Jersey brought this issue to the forefront again. And you can see the dollar value here. That's $500 million for 1 out of 50 states. And it's a governor putting it in. So there's my background. Now what do we do? I mean, number 2, what do we do? Number 3 will be, what can you do? So we worked on a predictive model in this broader framework of kind of how do we get the biggest bang for your buck on infrastructure repair? Right, I'm going to walk you through how we were able to kind of convince folks in the city of Flint and now elsewhere to think about this objective. We want to have the greatest impact. So that's going to mean minimizing the total time, the number of days that different households live with lead. And that's going to mean going to the homes that have lead to replace them sooner. And that's how the money should be allocated. The actual Flint water crisis started way back in 2014. I'm not going to get into this, but just to know, a decision was made by someone who happened to not be democratically elected because he was an emergency manager at the time in 2014. They switched the water source. It led to corrosion that made lead fall into the actual drinking water. And most of you, unless you lived in Michigan, heard about this in around January, February 2016. And later in 2016, quite a lot of money started being allocated directly to Flint. In fact, $100 million, $120 million by 2017 came into the city of Flint to find these lead service lines and replace them with copper ones. One problem. We spoke to folks in the city of Flint. We said, how can we help? Initially, Google wanted to provide some funding for an app. And we said, yeah, we'll help you build an app. But we think the real problem is we need to help find them, help them find their lead pipes and remove them. And so we asked for data, and we got a bunch of data. We got data on what they thought the service lines might be. We got data on water samples from before. We got data on land value and home value. And we said, but how many service lines do you actually know in reality? And the answer was, out of 50,000 homes, they knew the material of 36 homes. That's 36, not 36%, 36 out of 50,000. And so our challenge became, well, first before we figure out exactly where the lead is, we need to do some good data collection. And so our basic statistical hats went on, and we worked with, that's me in the middle, you can see a younger me, not the one with glasses and long hair, actually, that's not me, the one on the left actually is me. And my colleagues, Jake Abernathy, who's also a professor at University of Michigan at the time, we actually worked with a team of data science students. Undergrads, graduate students, we were taking anyone who had any experience with data. And we actually had a little hackathon, actually during the middle of finals 2016. And what that allowed us to do is kind of start leveraging that data into some insights. And we started going to Flint and meeting with local officials, community members, pastors, contractors, and understanding how their decision processes really was looking. Before telling them what to do, we weren't giving them advice yet. We just were learning. At some point that summer, we asked the question, well, if you have this fixed budget, how are you going to, start allocating it? How are you going to decide which homes to go to? And they said, well, we're going to go to this neighborhood and this neighborhood and this neighborhood and see what we get. And so we were getting a little nervous about this. And that was because they were making their decision mostly based on records that looked like this. This was the data. They had, about 20,000 homes that they had information from maps like this, or index cards that looked like this. It was a pretty remarkable kind of realization. It turns out they are not alone. Most cities and water systems around the country have something like this. And we had to actually work with another organization, Vidato Captricity, which has its own machine learning algorithms to extract the text and translate this into useful data. We did that. We did our absolute best to translate this into a predictive model. And we were able to collect data in real time. So we built a little app that actually, as my colleague explaining to a contractor, type this information into this Google map, click this Google map, type it into this Google form, and I was getting push notifications in a Google Sheet in real time while I was in class teaching in 2016 and 17 of what materials were found underground in Flint. Initially, based on those old records, they thought the number was going to be about 10 to 20% of the city had lead. Well, in the first 200 or so data points that they collected before we influenced where they were going, they didn't find 10 to 20% lead. They found 96% lead. And we looked at them and said, why do you think that's the case? We have an idea. They said, well, we're really proud of it. We went where we thought there'd be lead. We said, yes, but what are you going to tell the EPA? What are you going to tell your state agency? What are you going to tell the public about how long this is going to take? How many cases do you really have? How much money do you need over the next 3, 4, 5, 10 years to get this job done? Again, sound familiar? There's a lot of uncertainty. And we said the best way that you're going to be able to resolve this uncertainty is first, go to a randomized set of homes. Go to these 400 or 500 homes that we've just selected semi-randomly for you and go there. Once you do that, you can answer those questions to the state and federal agencies and public. And then we're going to be able to use a predictive model and give you really good answers home by home by home by home. And they did it. They actually did it. We built this nice closed loop system from letting them inspect, they confirm the work, we analyze and update our predictive model. And if you're curious about what machine learning techniques we used, I'm more than happy to talk about random forest and XGBoost and boosted trees and all that stuff, and why we didn't use deep learning, blah, 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 blah. I love it, but I'm not going to bore you with it now. What actually ends up mattering more is what we do with all that prediction, right? So what? Great, a good model. Turns out the reason a good model is important here is because, well, if it's not good, you have to waste that much time and money and effort going into homes and streets to dig. And you can see that gets kind of a lot. It's pretty expensive, a lot of labor and a lot of time. And so what we end up looking at here is to say, where should we go next? We start sending in some inspection crews to different homes. And this is what happens as the data accumulates. We start sending them in wider and wider areas. You can see the kind of scattering of homes. They started in kind of 2, 3, or 4 neighborhoods. Now it starts scattering a bit more. We end up designing a pretty crappy, I'd say, map that we start showing to local politicians. And we said, we could probably do better than this. But this is where we turn to raw students. And I'll walk you through exactly why. One of the things around 2019 that became really critical was, how do we really get this out into the world and make a difference? We're 2 academics. We're trying to figure out what to do. We're working with some students, some recent graduates. We've got a little bit of money that we're using out of our research budget. Perhaps we could put more money into this. And so the Business Plus Impact Studio began in 2019, January, with this project. And perhaps you've heard a little bit about Impact Studio. I'm not going to give you the full rundown. You can hear it from Brad or Diana or Scott or Jerry Davis elsewhere. But here's what it looked like on the ground. For the 2019 year, it wasn't just business students. It was raw students working with policy, with social work, within School of Information and engineering and public health students who really took a deep dive into this issue and said, what's the underlying benefits, thinking through design thinking and very much consumer research type mindset, is actually about trust and transparency. That there's a complete lack of trust in government and the decision makers, and a lack of trust in information. That people are saying, I don't trust my water, even though all scientific evidence is saying the water is safe to drink, because they don't know what their pipes are. Or what if they get their pipes replaced, but they don't trust the government, and so they're still not going to trust their water. So this really kind of started sinking into me and my colleagues. The next term, that Impact Studio team of students, again, these are teams of 4, 5, 6 students, really agile, really quick, working through fast iterations of problems and problem statements. And they really asked the question, how might we take that insight and start building something, creating something? And it ended up being very much kind of in collaboration with me and my team, have been thinking about, well, what would be the best looking and most impactful digital tool or maybe printed piece of information that visually communicates this information in a trustworthy, transparent way that actually helps individual households and community leaders and public officials. That's what they've been staffed at. Fortunately, this term, it's a mix of business students, design science, and art and design students that have the skills to do just that. And those results have actually informed what my colleagues and I have done. Looks a little better nowadays, but this is something that actually is going to be rolled out to the city of Flint in the next couple of weeks. It's something that we now have ready to go and have started to build for other communities that have wanted it. It's informed by public health experts from the Natural Resources Defense Council, which is kind of like the American Civil Liberties Union for the environment, who really are the public health experts that are watchdogs against mishandling of by government and corporate agencies. And so we've started to test this and user test this with different folks around the community and different community groups. But let me just tell you what has happened really since we've gotten involved and how we know this is effective and where we are, where I want to leave this kind of case to you to discuss a little bit in the last kind of bit of time that we have. So we implemented this partially. And so the success measure is, well, what percentage of homes that we intended to replace actually were replaced successfully, like actually had lead? Because a big cost here is digging a hole, realizing it's copper and you didn't need to go there, and filling it back in. Of course, the biggest cost is missing a home entirely that had lead and ignoring it, but we're not talking about that. So we're looking at, in that green, you can see the hit rate. This is from September onward in 2016 and 17 a bit, in looking at what was the percentage of homes we told them to go to that actually, in fact, had lead. It was around 80%. We were happy. We were nerds, so we wrote a bunch of statistical models and simulations to say, oh, we could do better than 82%. It was pretty good. They were happy. At the end of the year, they kind of hired a big fancy company, engineering company, to come in and run the show. So our point person kind of stepped aside, and we spoke with this new company, and they said, yes, we're excited to work with you, super excited to work with you. And then they ignored us completely. They said, yeah, we don't need you. We don't need you. And this was their hit rate, about 15%. Wasted lots of money. 10,000 digs, only found 1,000, 1,500 homes that had lead. There was quite a lot of press. The Atlantic wrote a story. There's a bunch of other press. Nate Silver's tweeting about us, saying, wow, humans really suck. That was the punchline, I understood. And the answer is, no. Some people built an algorithm that was helpful and other people ignored it. Well, fortunately, because of really amazing advocates and lawyers, legal cases were already pending, and they said, would you testify to all of this? Would you analyze their data? And I did. And I said, this company is doing worse than random guessing. Statistically worse than random guessing. Here's the estimated number of lead homes that are still out there. That was filed in the court, and there actually was a positive response. A federal court order said, City of Flint, you must use the predictive model of Schwartz and Abernathy. It's on the right-hand side of the screen. And they did. 2019, February, March, it was mandated after national news, and it was actually used. It was pretty amazing impact to have, because this was a true opportunity. We got a little nervous and we said, well, it better be good now. Everyone's watching. And sure enough, it went right back up. That green line went right back up. So some of you might be looking at this and saying, wow, this is an amazing impact. This is so cool. Some of you might be looking at this and saying, this is a business case. How can you do this? How can you replicate this in every city elsewhere? And we asked the same kind of question. And so there's a lot of alternatives here. And this is what also the Impact Studio has been tasked with looking at, is what should this be? Should it be a company? Should it be a nonprofit? Should it be a university center? Just, we're academics, actually, so maybe it should live within the university. Should it be open source software? We're data nerds, so we could put it out on GitHub and people could just download this and use it in any city. Maybe there's no real IP or value. We could just give it away for free. Is there some hybrid? How do we do this? So take a second, think about it, and I'm gonna open it up for discussion. First, I'm gonna, Greg, let's have them look at a poll now. And you should all be seeing a little poll pop up. And take that poll. Tell us what you think, and then we'll talk through these results. This is April 2019. It's just a year ago. I'll tell you what we've done since, but I'm genuinely curious to hear the distribution of answers now. Let everyone kind of answer here. Oh, it's really fun to see the poll roll in. This is so cool.
to be clear, Eric, it's not about your enjoyment. It's everybody's participation. But it is cool.
Well, you can see it too, Brad.
I can see it too.
And one of the things I want you to think about, and that I want as you, and I would invite you to raise questions in the chat, or provide kind of explanation in the chat, is to say, why, on what grounds? So what about this situation sounds like it ought to be one or the other, and what could be the benefits, costs and benefits of each? You know, just populate the chat with some thoughts. Kind of defend your response. We've got just about over 100 voted. So, well, a couple more trickling in. Oh. And one of the things that I'll say, we've thought through a lot of these, but we haven't thought about every single answer to them. So really, this is a genuine, as close to as live as you're going to get. Okay.
Eric, just an interesting observation as you were going through with respect to your research and working with colleagues across the campus is just how meaningful, like being able to have that level of impact and advance that research, that really kind of the power of the student community helping you out and helping your colleagues out as you're getting closer to building that model. Is that right?
Yeah, it couldn't have happened. It couldn't have happened. Students the entire time have been the drivers of both the data analysis and the kind of pushing us to think harder about how do we deeply incorporate this into some institution or culture or community to actually make an impact.
So this is an organizational question, right? It's an organizational design question, and with the objective function being how can we actually maximize our positive impact? Right.
Yeah, exactly. Greg, I think you could probably show the poll now. This is really interesting. So you guys can all see this now, right? Should be coming soon. Or Greg, am I just going to be able to show it on my shared screen? I see. So it ends up being that nonprofit wins at 36%. For-profit comes in almost tied for last at 15%. University-owned program also pretty low at 19%. And open source software all the way towards that top at 30%. The fact that the winner, quote, is 36% shows you're also pretty uncertain about the right thing to do here. That's not all that far from 25, 25, 25, 25. It's actually quite interesting and noteworthy in and of itself. And as I'm going to scroll through chat here, thinking about this, I'm going to go to let's start with open source software. So Varun, you're saying, thinking about open source software could benefit from shared intelligence, and the model could be improved quickly and significantly. Absolutely. I mean, I think the model itself has the most to benefit from being opened up, and I'm very much an open source kind of person, use mostly open source software in R or Python. And I think the algorithm itself and the model itself is. One thing that I think a bunch of people that have been thinking about that aspect kind of have been excited about how this open source, and Anshu also is saying the open source system will allow people to continue building this further and use for other scenarios more widespread. Let's think about who the users are. And one challenging thing here is the communities that have the most to gain are not the most sophisticated data scientists that can just clone something from GitHub and expand it and use it. In fact, they're often underserved communities. Yes, we might be able to help New York and Chicago with open source software, but they were fine to begin with. But smaller communities like Toledo, Ohio, or bigger cities that are smaller, constricting in size and under-resourced, like Newark or Detroit, cities with a lot of lead, a lot of poverty, and disproportionately minorities, don't have a lot of funds to fund a bunch of data scientists to build these kind of tools. So we were nervous about that. Let's look through some of the other issues. A university system, I think, has some of its pros and cons, but it's also a bit confined to the university, right? It has some benefits of having the kind of warm glow of the nonprofit of a university, but it then has to go through the university bureaucracies. May not be as agile, can't work with every possible customer. I see a bunch of, a couple of comments now on the open source. So saying that other approaches might be hard to scale. It's a great point. Nonprofit, for-profit can be hard to scale. Way harder to scale than open source. And the question is, but scale to whom? And something in marketing we ask all the time is, what about the customer? I think there's plenty of opportunity for nonprofit and for-profit and for open source. And so one of the things that we start pushing here, and just to wrap up, just to think about as a couple of more comments are coming in, I'll pause for a sec. So you need an advocate. So Jordan is saying you need an advocate to spread awareness to use the system. So the nonprofit would allow that. I think it provides organizations an attractive opportunity to donate to the cause. Jordan, that is really where I think we were spending a lot of time thinking. So it's 2019, we started getting interest from other cities. And we said, we've got to start a nonprofit. That's the only way to do this. And as we started going through, we realized, all right, well, we're going to need to start raising money. And then we also realized, well, what's the competition? And every other person that would be doing this instead of us is a massive multi-million, multi-billion-dollar engineering company working with contractors or providing software to those contractors and cities. I said, well, how are we really going to get in there? We're just going to be a volunteer service doing this. Might be nice, but we're not going to scale. And so what we've chosen from 2019 on is thinking as, Abhinav is saying, a for-profit argument. Similarly, that a private sector vehicle could help galvanize best-in-class innovation, be appropriately agile. If linked with the right price point, incentive, it could be customized for different uses. We've gone down this path, but we've mixed it with the nonprofit. And here's how. So we've called ourselves just verbally a for-profit social venture. It's called Blue Conduit, as in go blue, and water. It's convenient. And as we are looking at all of these options, we realize that, as I said, that there is incentive to innovate here. There is incentive for people to pay quite a bit of money because the substitute that they were paying for was super expensive, and we're trying to save them a lot of money and get them to get the lead out sooner. The challenge is we don't want to just serve the biggest communities and the richest communities. We actually want to serve the communities that can't pay, that have this problem but don't have the ability. And so what we're doing is we're also working with big foundations, and I have money now coming from the Rockefeller Foundation. That's a charitable donation, and other foundations coming from other organizations that are committed to water causes to enable us to work with, through a fiscal sponsor, kind of an intermediary, to provide free and highly discounted services to communities like the city of Trenton or the cities of Newark or the city of Detroit or the city of other cities in this kind of region that are lacking it. But we're building that up with the revenue scaled from some of the for-profit work. And so this kind of hybrid very much emerged. And this is kind of the team of us, the kind of core team. We have a bunch of other contractors and interns right now. But I want to call attention to the gentleman on the far right before I close out here, as I'm just over time. I'm going to leave time for your student to speak with you for the rest of the time, your classmate. Ian Robinson is also a Rosser. That MBA MS from University of Michigan, Peace Corps volunteer, he's an herb student. He's the epitome for me of 2017 herber who takes all of those experiences from business, and he is really running this business. Jake and I are not running this business. We're full-time professors. We're involved, but he's the herber, the Michigan Ross student who actually is making this happen with masters from sustainability from the School of Environment and Sustainability, and actually 2 other undergraduate degrees from the University of Michigan. But that's where we are right now. And it really could not have happened without Ross. It could not have happened without the University of Michigan. I don't need to pitch you on specific initiatives and programs. Hopefully that's clear of how I value them from here. I would say I would be so happy to speak with any of you individually or groups of you. Just feel free to email me and reach out, read about my work here is easy to find. You can see our very bad website as we're just getting started, but have customers.
Did you actually literally just say your bad website as you're getting started?
Yep.
Yeah, you're a marketing professor, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just want to make that absolutely clear.
My personal website's good, but business is okay.
I think we have hundreds of people around the world who judge whether or not your personal website is good. Okay.
It's true.
Yeah. Hey, Eric, thank you so very much for sharing this with everybody. I think the thing that strikes me as an associate dean and as your colleague, as a faculty member, is how we're actually able to leverage, if you will, foundational research and understand, from research to applied field and action to like understanding and living that research by being in the field and understanding both with the students and yourself and your colleagues, and then developing a solution. And let's be honest, Eric said this himself. He's a nerd. I'm a nerd. We're our comparative and competitive advantage is to focus on trying to find the truth in the world through our research, data sciences. And then we're not able to actually make that impact without being able to engage in our broader communities. And this is a solution that we're trying to live right now. Eric and his colleague and Jake are trying to live right now, and are able to do that. You don't have to. I would highlight that you don't have to have that master's in statistics to do this work, because we have a number of students across the campus and anchored here at the Ross School that are doing very much similar work and educational work, right? So there's credit bearing associated with this in our Impact Studio. Now I'm gonna get to Chloe in just a second, but I want to give a quick shout out to what is truly the professor. You'll see that Professor Jerry Davis you've got a new screensaver in the background, but Professor Jerry Davis, I did point in the chat, I linked to him. He's the associate dean who's responsible overseeing Impact Studio. In fact, all of our activities in business in Impact. And Jerry, we've talked for too long, and I want to get Chloe on here in just a second. But Jerry, could you just share briefly about kind of the nature of the projects that more broadly are going on, both educationally and the impact that we're trying to have? Would you mind doing that for us?
Absolutely. Thanks, Brad. Brad, I'll be super quick here. So part of the magic of Michigan is that the university is good at absolutely everything. It has 100 schools and departments rated in the top 10. And not only are they good, they'll actually talk to you. So when we put together the classes for the Impact Studio, we specifically recruit students from public policy, public health, social work. It's kind of like putting together one of those X-Men teams where you have a lot of people who are really good at everything coming together to take on a problem like this. So the business students will know a lot about discounted cash flow analysis. The social work students will know about empathic interviewing. public policy students will know what are the policy implications. And you put them together, you get this really powerful professional education where you can take basic research like, Eric's work came out of a nerd thing called the multi-armed bandit problem, which you'll want to Google and dig into. But
thank you for the shout out on my research. That's just whew.
but the business school is loaded with nerds like Brad coming up with these brilliant innovations, and our feeling is that the students can be the conduit, so to speak, to connect the science in the lab, the basic science, to impact in the world by thinking through how do we take these great innovations and turn them into something that people in the world need. And as Eric said, the theory here is committed to the mission, agnostic to the means. We don't say this has to end with a pitch to venture capitalists. We say this has to end with an enterprise that's going to make a difference in the world, that's going to solve a problem. And so for Brad's specific questions, we're thinking, how do we use fintech for financial inclusion? Something super topical right now. How do you get $1,200 checks to people that don't have bank accounts? And so we're using faculty research in finance and in computer science to figure out how do we create impactful solutions for people that might not have a bank account, that might be going to payday lenders, and how do we use our technologies, our insights to be able to address those problems. We're thinking about infrastructure. We're thinking about how do retailers deal with the fact that low-income people pay more on average for products. Can we find a way to turn that around? Basically drawing on the breadth of faculty research to come up with new, insightful solutions that we can scale out there in the world and launch as enterprises. Lots more to say, rossimpactstudio.com if you want the quick link to what we're up to.
Thanks, Jerry. I really appreciate it. And I want to highlight that, yes, it's the impact, and yes, it's the translation of the research, but I can't think of a more fruitful location and a more kind of live experience for learning than doing something like this when you're in school. And by no means, right, on the issue of inclusion, it doesn't matter where you wish to go with your Ross MBA in the future. It really doesn't. What matters is that you have that experience and that learned experience and that opportunity to apply those foundations to really tackle real-time problems. We're doing it from the standpoint of the UN and the sustainability goals and societal goals. And other faculty, I mean, you can imagine all forms of types of research that then gets translated into what's the leading way to think of it as a leader, as a manager, as an MBA when you go forward with your career. Thank you both so very much, and thank you for all the wonderful questions that were being posed. I want to turn it over right now to Chloe Hull. Chloe is a dual degree student, both with a Ross MBA and Masters of Science in the School of Information. Chloe, instead of a longer introduction and the like, I think we could talk about UC Davis, you talk about all the cool things you're doing with IBM and the like, but I think the most important thing is really how you've had that lived experience here as a student, and how action-based learning and kind of being able to engage in that has been so incredibly important. Chloe's had a wonderful educational experience here with the possible exception of her core strategy class. Wouldn't you agree with me on that one?
Hey, Brad, no, I would say the core strategy class was actually one of my favorites. And I'm not just saying that because you were the professor, but it was a great class to start out the experience on. And I'm, not looking for any grade boost there. The class is over. So, so thanks, Brad, and hi to everyone from around the world. I'm very excited to be here with all of you guys today to share a little bit about my story. So as Brad mentioned, I'm a second year at Ross, and I feel very fortunate that as a dual degree, I have another year here at the University of Michigan to explore some of the other opportunities here that I haven't had the chance to do so yet. But I'll just talk through a little bit about kind of how I thought about choosing an MBA program. So when I was in your shoes choosing an MBA program, I was looking for two main things. The first was a strong community where I felt at home. And the second was a program that would enable me to make the career switch that I knew that I wanted to make. Before coming to Ross, I was working in management consulting in San Francisco. I worked primarily with tech clients, and I found myself really excited about everything that was going on in the tech world. So I knew that I wanted to make a transition into industry so I could work more closely with all the tech products that I was so excited about. And when I was thinking about that transition from consulting to product management, which is the role that I was interested in, I knew that an MBA was the perfect way to do that. So once I decided that I wanted to go get my MBA and I was looking at programs, I used those two criteria that I was thinking about, that I mentioned earlier, to kind of think about how I wanted to make sure that I chose the right program. So the two things I was looking for, again, are just a really strong collaborative community where everyone was smart and accomplished, but also really humble and wanting to help other people around them. And then second, the academic and extracurricular opportunities that would allow me to make that transition into a product management role. So I know you guys are going to hear all about Ross and the Ross difference in our communities, and this session is more on the academic experience, so I'll talk more about that. From an action-based learning perspective, there's no shortage of opportunities to learn and grow here at Ross. I know that Jerry, Brad, and Eric have all mentioned there's over 100 top 10 rated grad programs in addition to everything that Ross has to offer. Many students, like myself, pursue dual degrees, but there's also a lot of students who don't pursue dual degrees who take classes at other programs. I've had classmates in every SI class I've been in that aren't dual degrees, that are students at Ross that are just taking classes at SI to learn more because they're interested, and that's a great option for everybody. So for me, I mentioned I chose to pursue a dual degree at the School of Information where I'm focusing on data science, which has been great. But that's definitely accessible to everyone, even if they're not interested in pursuing that full dual degree. So I wanted to highlight 3 experiences that I've had at Ross that have really shaped my experience. And when I was thinking about this, I actually had a hard time thinking about what the top 3 were because there truly have been so many formative experiences that I've had here, but I wanted to narrow it down just to keep it short. So the first one is Open Road. I participated in Open Road last May, where myself and a group of 3 other MBAs spent 1 month road tripping across the US and working with small businesses, nonprofits, and entrepreneurs. We spent 1 week in each city working with one entrepreneur or small business. So for example, one of the businesses that we worked with was in Little Rock, Arkansas, and it was a sustainability-focused, community-oriented cafe. We helped them look at how best to price menu items and how to best train their staff on communicating the importance of sustainability. Coming from a corporate background where I was working in consulting and I did my internship at IBM, another huge company, this gave me the opportunity to see unique challenges and opportunities that entrepreneurs and small businesses faced, while I could also bring some of the skills that I developed throughout my first year at the MBA to make a tangible impact on several different communities. And that was one of the most impactful and rewarding, both personally and professionally, experiences that I've had so far at Ross. The second one I want to talk about is something that both Brad and Eric mentioned. It's the Data Analytics and Consulting Club. I led a project with DAC this year with an auto company where we used machine learning to predict customer churn. And this project was great because it merged a lot of what I've been learning in my Ross classes and data science classes on a more conceptual level, and it showed how we actually can apply what we're learning in class in a real life context. And that really helped kind of tie together everything that I was learning in class. And I feel like I've been able to take much more away from that because I really saw how does this apply in a real world context and how will this be applicable in my work after I graduate. Another thing that was great about that was we had the opportunity to grow a relationship with our clients. So several of my teammates are going into consulting, and that was a really good opportunity to sort of flex those relationship building skills that are so important for consulting. The last thing that I want to talk about is a class that I'm in at Ross right now. It's called AI for Business, and we spend the class understanding and talking about AI's possibilities, limitations, and the ethical considerations that we as business people need to consider when we're working with AI. It contextualizes AI for those who will be leading businesses impacted by, or sometimes in the case of Eric's business, even focused solely on AI. We've read a bunch of really interesting books and articles, and it's pushed me to think about AI in a way that I hadn't otherwise. And I'm somebody who's thought about it a lot and reads a lot about it. So it's been a really, really good and impactful class where we engage a lot with one another, and it's really interesting. And it's been great preparation for me for this summer, where I'll be interning as a product manager on Zillow's machine learning team. So it's really helped me to start thinking and kind of getting in the right mindset as I head into the summer. So those are just 3 of the formative experiences that I've had at Ross. I didn't even go into any of the personal or social experiences that I've had, which have also been really formative and fun, honestly, as well. If anyone has any questions on anything that I talked about today, or just general questions about Ross or being an MBA, please feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to share my experiences. I can throw my email in the chat if anyone wants to reach out. And thank you, and I hope you guys have a great rest of the virtual GBR experience.
Thank you so much, Chloe. I really appreciate it. Yeah, we'll get right past it. It's a recorded line, so we'll be clear about the fact that grade negotiation is not ex post what we're in the business of. But I just felt we at least highlight that and get that out of the way. What you've heard from today, both from Eric and then Jerry, I'm so glad you were able to jump in this call, and then from Chloe, is really the diversity. And again, number 2 on my list of things why we're different: the breadth and the depth of excellence across the entire university. Eric's work leverages colleagues from other parts of the university. And this is not the business school going off to the university going, we know business and let's just pick and choose all the other individuals who are trying to make an impact in the world. It's about that we are truly, truly, truly engaged as one university. Yes, we're the business school, but I do work in healthcare and in fact, actually access to and policies surrounding end-of-life care and hospice, both the United States and globally. And I can't do that work, and I can't educate, and I can't do projects unless I'm able to connect with colleagues from the entire campus, the medical school, School of Public Policy, School of Social Work. So that is, I think, one of the defining characters to who we are from an academic standpoint. I know Chloe said that we're not, she's addressing the academics at this stage, and that is true. That's the purpose of our conversation and our meeting today. But the reality of the matter is that it's not just the academic experience. It's the holistic experience to become that leader, to go explore, broaden your horizons. And whether you have a laser focus on where you want to go 5-10 years from now, or you're coming for the exploration and widening your horizons and growing as a member of society and a member of our planet, that's what we want you to do when you come here. And that depends upon the community, and that community is your colleagues that you'll see on the screen right now. That is the defining characteristic and the support that we have for each other. Whether it be the Flint water crisis, whether that be analytics for understanding customer behavior for a large organization, or, and to give you an idea of where we're at right now, I taught a core strategy class to our executive MBAs yesterday, yes, in this format. And 2 days in advance, I was able to, and quite literally, the old school, pick up the phone and call Mary Ellen Coe and Peter Faricy. Peter Faricy used to run Amazon's largest business at Amazon. He now runs the global footprint for Discovery. And Mary Ellen Coe, who runs the global business solutions for all of Google. These are individuals who are on our advisory board, and they willingly, immediately gave 1 hour of their time to talk about the leadership challenges they're facing right now in their organization and how COVID is affecting business. And really what it was about was how do they, as leaders, are empathetic and responsive to their respective teams. Our dean teaches as well a course in leadership. You may have met him last weekend if you were able to dial in. And this coming weekend, he is actually going to, the next weekend, he will be doing a series of leadership courses for another audience. And he'll have the COO of Bank of America, the CFO of American Airlines on to talk about leadership lessons. This is not name dropping. This is the importance of other individuals, our alums, connecting and being engaged to the educational experience of all of us here. That is the most critical component of it, is that we are a community that learns together, strives together, and is always moving forward intellectually, with compassion, with care, and with our eye on a safe, productive, and engaged future. I want to close off right now by thanking each and every one of you for joining us today. Eric, thank you so much for spending time. Jerry, I'm so glad you're able to jump in. Chloe, as always, it is wonderful to see you. I want to make sure that we all have a chance to either, well, as long as we're not 6 feet apart, but when we're together, an elbow bump, a handshake, a hand across our heart, with my gratitude and with all the peace that I have for all of you to be safe, be well, and I cannot, as well as the entire team, look forward to seeing you in person. All the very best, everybody. And of course, as always, signing off, go blue, onward, forward, success. Thank you very much, everybody.